Well, it's that time of year again, ladies and gentlemen. The IHSAA Boys Basketball Tournament begins this Tuesday, where 403 teams will start their conquest to hang more banners in gymnasiums around the state. But today, we will focus on one sectional in particular. That's going to be Sectional 61 in the Valley of Southern Indiana. It's Borden High School is the host of what is always an entertaining sectional. I'm Hayden Smith, your host today, joined alongside Cruz Martin right here in Bloomington, Indiana. Cruz, really, just before we get started here, obviously, you've played in this sectional before. You really know how it all pans out. You know the excitements, the nerves that come with it. Really, what are some of these kids feeling in the weeks leading up to it?
Well, they're obviously feeling nerves. I mean, postseason basketball, nobody really wants their season to end. And, you talk about the records coming in. You always wipe that clean going into the postseason because anything could happen in March. I think everybody knows that. And it's the best time of the year. It's whenever most of the teams are at their best in terms of a basketball perspective. And, it's a dream come true, especially when you grow up in the state of Indiana playing the game of basketball.
Cruz, let's take a look at this whole field before we really dive into the certain matchups that we're going to see, especially coming up on Tuesday in Borden. First off, just looking at the bracket as a whole, starting at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, once again in Borden, it's going to be Christian Academy taking on West Washington. That's going to be a very entertaining matchup that we will talk about here soon enough. Then you've got at 7:30, Lanesville taking on South Central. The two teams that received the bye being Rock Creek and Borden. Rock Creek will take on the winner of CAI and Dub, and Borden will take on the winner of Lanesville and SC, both being on a Friday. Cruz, starting off with the host school, the Borden Braves, they have had it's been a streaky season at times for Borden, but they finished out the year 15-8 and currently on a 5-game winning streak, 4-1 in Southern Athletic Conference play, only behind South Central. Really, what have you seen from Borden this season?
Well, it's been a really interesting year. You take a look at the main culprit for a lot of their success, at least on the offensive end, Kasem Nash averaging 21 points a game, really prolific scorer. But there's a lot of pieces around him who have been solid contributors. Now, they don't really contribute in mass in terms of scoring production, but they all have really done a nice job of fulfilling their roles on this particular team. Judd Missy, the point guard, has done a fantastic job of handling the basketball. Garrett Schmidt, big, athletic, can score around the rim, able to rebound really well. Xander Keith, Will Bannett, able to knock down shots from the perimeter. There's a lot of really good pieces on this Borden team, and I really like them. Even though they haven't won some games that they aren't supposed to, they haven't lost games, at least in my mind, that they were supposed to win. So, really solid year from Borden, and Doc Nash, a wizard when it comes to March. So we'll see what Borden's able to muster up.
Yeah, and Cruz, just looking at this whole season for Borden as a whole, they lost quite a few pieces after last year, but they've also got a lot of young pieces, like you said, that have really taken that next step and have provided to be a really integral part of this entire Borden offense and the defensive end. This is a Borden team that's actually been very solid on the defensive end this season, only allowing 44 points a game to their opponents. That's only second in the sectional field behind Christian Academy. You take a look up and down the line for Borden this season, schedule-wise, again, they're feeling really, really good coming into sectional play on this 5-game winning streak, and they've got quite a bit of time to rest and prepare for their eventual matchup coming up on Friday.
Yeah, and that's one of the luxuries that you have when you get that first round bye in the sectional. You get that Tuesday off. You have an entire week to, outlook and prepare, and really 2 weeks, honestly, if you think about it, because, those games towards the end of the year really don't have a whole lot of meaning in the bigger picture. Obviously, you want to be playing your best basketball by that time, so you want to play well, but it's not going to end your season, obviously, if you don't play well at the end of the year compared to in the postseason, like we have seen in the past from many teams in the sectional. So, yeah, I think Borden's feeling really good coming in. Again, a 5-game winning streak. And again, Doc Nash, wizard in March. So they have the pieces to do it. They have a great mentor in Doc Nash. The coaching staff there, absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't be shocked to see Borden potentially turning some heads. I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's definitely on the table.
There's no question. You never know what's going to happen whenever it comes to these sectional games. If last season doesn't tell you, absolutely incredible. What a fantastic sectional last season. You had Rock Creek pull off a couple stunners, knocking out Christian Academy, and then Borden in the sectional championship off of a game-winning buzzer beater in one of the best atmospheres I've seen in quite a long time. This season will not disappoint as well, as the sectional is back in Borden after being in West Washington last season. I mean, the sectional championship, we might be a little biased, Cruz, but I'm going to say the environment in Borden, whenever it comes to March, it's incredible, and it does not compare.
Yeah, I mean, the entire staff at Borden High School, whenever they do put on these postseason tournaments, always do a fantastic job. Again, could be a little bias coming from us, but the presentation is always great. Yeah. They take a lot of they take care of the teams and the officials.
Most people would agree with us.
Yeah, they take care of the teams and the officials. They always do a great job of making sure everyone's taken care of, and at least in my opinion, there's no place like it. Again, coming from me, take that with a grain of salt. But Borden High School is a special place.
Cruz, to finish off our conversations about Borden, we'll get back to them here shortly enough. But you look up and down their schedule once again, they really don't have those quality wins, but they also don't have losses where you're like, maybe they probably should have won that game. They've been very close at trying to beat some of these top tier teams. Some games that come to mind is at South Central, lost that game 65-64, had a shot to win it at the final seconds by Kasem Nash. It just fell short. And then you look up and down, they barely lost to Hauser, barely lost to North Davies, Christian Academy, and Springs Valley. This is a Borden team. You said it, Cruz. They could turn a lot of heads.
Yeah, they could turn a lot of heads if they were able to make winning basketball plays down the stretch of close games against these really good teams. You mentioned two of those teams that you mentioned are sectional opponents for the Braves, South Central and Christian Academy, and both I believe have better records than Borden and are higher up, at least percentage-wise, and where they are at in terms of favoritism with the sectional. You take a look at the first game that Borden played against South Central, 66-65 is the final score. Borden did not struggle scoring the basketball. They struggled stopping South Central from scoring the basketball.
A lot of people have.
Exactly. And you take a look at the Christian Academy game, Borden was able to hold Christian Academy, a really high-scoring offense, to 45 points, and I believe it was 45-41.
55-51.
55-51.
Yeah.
I was 10 points off.
55-51.
You hold them under 60 points. You score 50 points, which is not terrible. It's just you weren't able to make winning plays down the stretch.
61.
So if Borden can figure out how to make winning plays down the stretch, I think that they could be a really dangerous team, but that's only if they are able to do that.
Cruz, let's now look at, in my eyes, probably going to be the sectional favorites coming into sectional 61 play.
They're my sectional favorites.
Yes, there's no question. I mean, they've got the best overall record out of anybody. They're nearly unbeaten in sectional opponents. Of course, we're talking about Christian Academy. They are 19-4 and currently ranked, I believe it's 4th in John Harrell in Class 1A basketball. I mean, Cruz, this is a Christian Academy team that is just on another level. Joshua Renfro has proven to be one of the greatest players in Southern Indiana basketball, and he's got a great supporting cast behind him, and I think that is a big reason why Christian Academy is so good this season.
And this is the third season for that Christian Academy core of Josh Renfro and David Cook. I mean, I played against these guys whenever I was a senior and they were freshmen. They were pretty good back then too, and they've only gotten better since then. I mean, Josh Renfro this year averaging 21.5 points a game, almost 4 rebounds, 3 assists. David Cook has really impressed me with the way that he's developed from since he was a freshman to where he is now. I watched him in a summer game over the summer. I believe it was at Holy Family. I could be wrong about that, but I walked in the gym and I was thinking to myself, who's this giant 6'4" kid? And somebody told me it was David Cook. I go, no way. Yeah, it was David Cook. So I was impressed, first of all, by how much he's physically grown, but also he's grown a lot as a basketball player. And I'm happy to see the kid doing well. I am. And Christian Academy, going to be a really tough team to knock off. Again, they've been to the sectional championship 2 out of the last 3 years. Hayden Casey's done a really good job with that group ever since he came on as the head coach. What was it, in 2020, 2021? So, yeah, I mean, Christian Academy, at least in my book, is going to be the favorite. They're the team to beat.
There's no question about that. And again, I say that they almost have an unblemished record in sectional 61 play because they've lost to West Washington, who they are playing in the first round. That's the first game in sectional 61 at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. Cruz, that is definitely the biggest loss that stands out to me whenever you look at Christian Academy's schedule. Granted, it was at West Washington and an overtime loss, losing by 1 point, 57-56. Again, they're still going to be the sectional favorites coming into this, but they have somewhat of a tall task at hand, and they have to take revenge after their regular season loss.
Yeah, I mean, they have to take it personally. You go on the road and take on a West Washington team who I would say at best is mediocre, and that's not a knock on West Washington. That's just what the numbers say. I've watched them play a couple of times, too. They got some guys who are pretty good individually. Yes. Are they good as a team, though? I've only watched them play twice, so I don't really have a say on that. They were able to beat Christian Academy, though, which that in and of itself shows that they can be a good team. But if you're Christian Academy, yes, you have to take it personally. You also have to realize that you're going to have a long march to a championship. You have to go through all 3 rounds of the sectional. You have to play a team in the first round that you've already lost to this year. You got to play a Rock Creek team if you do end up defeating if you do end up defeating West Washington, who's always tough. They always play tough. And then you have to take on whoever is the winner of the other side of the bracket, Lanesville, South Central, or Borden. 2 of those teams are extremely good this year. So it's not going to be an easy path for Christian Academy, nor is it going to be an easy path really for any team, but Christian Academy especially.
It has been a historically good season for the Warriors down there in Christian Academy. They are enjoying one of their best seasons since 2014, 2015, whenever they went 21-5. This is a team that won in Sectional 61 and then went on to lose in the regional semifinals. I believe that one was to Bar Eve. I'd have to double check my math on that one. But you look again at a Christian Academy team that is a high-powered offense and a very good team on defense, too. Only hold opponents to 45 points a game. Really, Cruz, what are their quality wins this season, and what are some of the losses out of the 4 that have been rough beyond the West Washington game?
Well, there really haven't been many losses that have been rough beyond that West Washington game, but look at some of these games that they've won so far this year. I mean, the game against South Central, an annihilation of South Central, to be honest with you, and the numbers back me up. 91 points dropped against South Central. South Central only scoring 46.
Wow.
That's remarkable. The game winner against Silver Creek on their home floor, 59-56 in overtime. That was a big-time win for this Christian Academy team. And defeating Paoli, I believe that one was in regulation, but 62-59. This team has picked up some quality wins against really tough opponents. Paoli has a really good chance to win their sectional. Silver Creek, if they can get past Scottsburg in that 3A sectional, they could make a good run in the tournament as well. South Central is not a Passover team, even though that final score really doesn't say a whole lot about that case. South Central, again, one of the top 3 teams in this sectional, and have a really good chance of making it out along with Borden and Christian Academy.
And Cruz, you mentioned the South Central Rebels, and that's exactly who we're going to talk about coming up next. South Central is another team that is enjoying a historically good season. This is a Rebels team that I remember 2 years ago, your senior year in 2022, I saw Cole Thomas for the first time playing basketball in sectional play, and I immediately said I would not be shocked in a couple of years if this kid is one of the best players in the sectional, and that is coming true. He has been absolutely phenomenal this season, and so has his Rebels. It is their best season in over 20 years, which was the last time they won a sectional championship in 2002. Cruz, how good has South Central been this season?
They've been fantastic. I mean, 5-0 in conference play in a hyper-competitive Southern Athletic Conference. Again, Borden and Henryville usually, and Lanesville, at least as of the past couple of years, usually running that conference. South Central now starting to put their name into the hat, winning a conference title outright this year. Again, 5-0, 16-6 on the year. Good wins against Borden, that 1-point win on their home floor, 65-64. They beat a really good South Ripley team, also 72-64. One bad loss, I would say, I wouldn't even really categorize it as a bad loss, was the loss to Eastern, 5-point loss to the Musketeers, who have pieces that they could be really good as well. The record just doesn't show it. But yeah, South Central, a really good basketball team this year. I want to backtrack to Cole Thomas, because you said that you watched him my senior year in sectional play, and you said this kid could be really good. I played him going into my senior year when he was going into his freshman year in a Hoosier Hills League over in Charlestown. And he was playing against me in the championship game, and I don't even remember what he dropped. It was like 20 plus.
Probably ridiculous.
I was like, and Sean Condon, who is one of my good friends, teammate that we won a sectional title with, said that he was an incoming freshman at South Central. I looked at him, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
There's no way. He's got to be a senior.
You've got to be kidding me.
Is he a fifth year?
Gosh, man, he was definitely physically matured for his age coming in as a freshman, and he can really score the basketball. The kid can really play, and you pair him with Christian Kuiper, and you have a lethal 1-2 punch.
I mean, that is over 2,000 points combined between both of those players, between Cole Thomas and Christian Kuiper. They have been absolutely ridiculous this season, especially. And you got to tip your hat to a guy like Christian Kuiper, his senior year. He's going off with a bang as of right now. Again, we talked about how high-powered of an offense that this South Central team is. To put it in perspective, they average 62 points per game. But Cruz, it's been their defense that has struggled in some of these games because they have that ability to put up numbers in bunches, but they can't really hold their other opponents to lower numbers.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of Springs Valley over the last couple of years, where they like to get up and down the court. Yes. They like to run, but they don't like to play defense. They want to try to turn it into a track meet.
Hey, it works.
Here's the thing, though. This is the thing. This is the kicker for South Central. When you get to postseason basketball, the game starts to slow down.
Yes.
You have to start getting defensive stops. You have to learn how to stop teams, because possessions may last anywhere between 1 to 2 minutes. And this is just a number I'm throwing out here, but it's happened. Possessions can last between 1 to 2 minutes.
Especially in Southern Indiana basketball.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And so South Central has to try to make it a track meet, but if a team is able to control the tempo, South Central is going to be in trouble, because if they can't put up points and they can't get stops, they're going to be in trouble. That's my one concern with South Central. They're obviously, like you said, scoring the basketball won't be an issue. It's going to be whether they can stop other teams from scoring the basketball, and that's really the one problem with that philosophy of running up and down.
Cruz, once again, looking at the Rebels, this is a team that's certainly going to be battle-tested coming into tournament play. They played 3 games last week, coming up before they play potentially another 3 games if they're able to beat Lanesville and then beat Borden and then go to the sectional championship. Cruz, I bring up Borden because obviously you played for the Braves during your time in high school. I don't believe Borden ever played that many games. I believe it's really only ever been Salem, and then that's it to end out the season. So that's definitely got to take a toll on some of their bodies coming into tournament play.
Well, no doubt it, and especially after a long and grueling season, because the basketball season's long. Okay, you start conditioning when you get back from fall break, which is roughly around the middle of October, and you run at least to the first week of March. Okay, so we're talking about 5 whole months, 6 if you make a run in the tournament. Mm-hmm. So it's a long season. It really is a long season, and you want to be fresh whenever you get to tournament play, so that way you can play to the best of your capabilities. Yeah, you mentioned that we only play Salem before going into the postseason. That was the way that it was when I played. That's the way that I think it's been
there for a long
10
time,
years before I played. So, really easing the schedule in terms of how many games you play per week is crucial, especially that week right before sectionals. And it is a little bit concerning for South Central playing 3 games. The week before you have to play another 3 games potentially in order to win a sectional championship. So fatigue might be a problem for the South Central team. Who knows? We'll see how it plays out. But I definitely would keep an eye on that.
Hey, they're young. That's all I'm going to say. So they're definitely got the bodies to be able to do it.
You're acting like we're old. You're acting like we're old, man. We are 2 and 3 years removed from high school.
All I know is I couldn't do it right now. There's no question
That's true.
about that.
That's why there's conditioning.
That's exactly correct.
That's why you spend those 3 or 4 weeks leading up to the season getting yourself ready. I don't even know. I could give it a shot, but I don't know how I would do now.
Cruz Martin, you could probably still do it right now.
I don't know. I hope that's not a personal challenge. I don't know if I'm willing to take on that challenge yet, but give me 2 weeks to think about it. I might have to get back to you on that.
There's no question about that. Well, let's move on to our next team, and this is the defending sectional champions. I'm talking about the Rock Creek Academy Lions. They defeated the Borden Braves in the 2023 sectional championship on that incredible game-winning buzzer beater to end up moving on, where they eventually went on to the semi-state and lost in the Final Four. I believe it was the Final Four.
Yes.
And again, Cruz, you take a look at Rock Creek's record this season. They're 11-11 so far coming into sectional play. That does not really put it in to justice on how really they've been this season, because you look at their record last year, they were 7-14 and ended up being one of the better teams in Southern Indiana.
Yeah, well, they played a lot of tough teams on their schedule last year, and I think that really benefited them going into the postseason. And you'll see teams do this a lot. Whenever you have teams who are potentially really good, they'll try to load their schedule up with teams that are really good so they can battle test them and try to play some high-quality opponents so that way that you yourself improve as a team. That was the case with Rock Creek last year. Now, the difference between Rock Creek this year and Rock Creek last year is the amount of roster turnover that they've had since then. You lose Jaleb Tree, you lose Mariel Deeper, you lose Kiwan Biko, you lose Ladarius Wallace. Those are 4 of your best players leaving due to graduation.
Four starters, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of roster turnover. Now, there have been players who have stepped up and have really taken on great offensive roles. You take a look at Terrence Nord, hot shooter from beyond the arc, 14 points, 5 boards, 2 assists a game. Named Kalon Brown, 14 and a half points, averaging 2.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, has also stepped up nicely. Gavin Taylor, 8 and almost 9 points, actually, 3 rebounds and 5 assists. So he does a really good job distributing the basketball. This is my big kicker with Rock Creek, is experience. You talk about the roster turnover. A lot of that experience that you had leading into last year is now gone, and now you have fresh legs coming in. There's going to be a bit of a learning curve for Rock Creek, and anybody who says that there's not a learning curve when it comes to this doesn't know what they're talking about, because you have to go through certain things in order to become a really good basketball team. I mean, you can have talent, but to be a really good team and a collective unit, you have to be battle tested, and this group doesn't have that yet. Now, they could surprise everybody. They could put together a really good run. Talent. But in order, especially for me to have confidence in them and being able to win a sectional title in such a stacked pool, I think they have to be battle tested. And I think they could get there in a couple of years. I think they could. I just don't think this year's the year.
Well, and especially in the top part of the bracket that they're in, I mean, they could either go against Christian Academy or they could go against West Washington. I mean, this really isn't a top-heavy sectional this year. In all honesty, we haven't really seen a top-heavy sectional in quite some time. The past 3 or 4 years, it's really been up for grabs every single year. But, I mean, again, you look at Rock Creek, like you said, they're led by 2 guys, one of them being Terrence Nord, who knocked down a school record of 11 3-point shots.
That's
versus
a crazy
Portland
number.
Christian. Cruz, you were a sharpshooter yourself,
Yeah,
but boy,
debatable.
11 threes, that is incredible. This kid has the ability to just light it up at any given time.
Yeah, and that's really impressive too, coming from a player who didn't play a whole lot last season. Obviously, if I think he was 11 for 18 from 3-point land in that game. If you're shooting 18 threes, you have confidence. You have to have confidence in yourself because you wouldn't be shooting them otherwise. And hitting 11 of them, I mean, you don't see that in high school basketball. You get so diluted to the numbers, especially when you're watching pro basketball. You're talking about guys hitting 10 threes, I don't know, once a month or something like that. You get 12, 13, 14 threes as a record in the NBA. 11 threes in a high school game, you're forgetting. The NBA is, 48 minutes? High school is 32. This kid hit 11 three-pointers in 32 minutes. That is a really impressive number. I can't wait to watch this Terrence Nord kid play for the first time in person.
Well, and Cruz, once again, now we're going to look up and down the schedule for the Lions this season. And again, it's very similar a little bit to how Borden's schedule kind of lines up, not obviously record-wise, but how they've been able to win some of these games and lose some of them. They don't really have quality wins this season, but they do have those kind of closer losses to, again, some teams that are in the sectional. 2 of them that come to mind is their loss to South Central 63-58, and then their loss to Christian Academy 40-31. Granted, both of those were at home. It's going to be a completely different environment in Borden, but still, you got to feel a little bit good that that you've competed with some of these teams, and you have that chance.
Yeah, and that's why I feel good, at least from a talent perspective, for this Rock Creek team. I think that they have the tools to be successful, at least from a physical perspective. The thing that concerns me, like I've said, is the experience and that they bring with them, or I guess the lack thereof.
Head coach. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And they have Chris Brown leading the way, I believe, in 28th year or something like that.
Season.
28 seasons at Rock Creek. Chris Brown, three-time sectional champion too, and took Rock Creek on their best season in school history last season. So clearly, you got a really good guy at the head coaching position to help lead these guys. But again, I think experience is going to hurt this team. Now, again, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I always say this whenever I make a claim. Always say this when I make a claim. I've been wrong before, so don't take anything that I say to heart. It's not chiseled in stone. So, I think experience again is going to hurt Rock Creek. But again, they have the tools. They're probably my dark horse, honestly. Them or West Washington have a chance to be the dark horse. Now, which one would it be if I had to choose one? I would probably say West Washington again because of experience.
Yes.
But Rock Creek has the tools from a basketball perspective and a talent perspective to be really successful. And you mentioned those close games, 40-31 was it against Christian Academy,
Against Christian Academy.
And then a 5-point loss against South Central. Close games. You have to figure out how to win those. And I think Borden has had the same problem with some of their close games with really good teams. Again, experience can come back to haunt you in those, but they do have that experience under their belt going in, so maybe they've learned something from that, and maybe Rock Creek will turn some heads in the sectional.
Cruz, you mentioned your dark horse in the West Washington Senators, and that's exactly who we're going to be talking about now. This is an upset-minded Senators team that is coming off. It hasn't been an incredible year, of course, but I mean they're under their new head coach and Jamie Cummings. They're 9-13 so far this season. But they've also been able to beat the team that is currently the sectional favorite, and they are going to be playing Christian Academy in that first round of sectionals. So you've got to watch out for the Senators.
Yeah, and they have experience, and they're a well-rounded team as well. And even though their record isn't really reflective of that, and they play in a tough conference. The Potomac Lake Athletic Conference is a really tough conference. You talk about some of the teams in there. You take a look at Orleans. I'm blanking on a couple other ones.
Paoli, Mitchell, Springs Valley.
There you go. You go. Mitchell and Springs Valley, Paoli. Orleans is a really tough one, though, that always comes to mind first. They play in a really tough conference, and they didn't win a conference game this year, 7th in the PLAC. But, again, this is a team that's been battle-tested. They played some of the best teams in 1A basketball in Southern Indiana, so they have that on their side. And they have a pretty solid roster as well. Ian Rosenbaum, Jackson Cameron, Kenton Chase, the little guard, who I believe is a senior this year.
Tough.
He's very quick, very crafty with the basketball.
Made the Washington County Holiday Tournament team.
Exactly. They have players who are crafty and can distribute the ball, and they have guys who can score the ball. Now, if they can play as a collective unit, really commit to a game plan, they probably have another chance to move on in the tournament and potentially turn some heads as well. This is why I think that this sectional field, even though it is pretty top-heavy, West Washington and Rock Creek can give themselves a fighting chance if they play the right style of basketball and are able to, commit to a game plan and not stray away from it. I mean, they have a shot.
West Washington has scored 4 victories over sectional foes in a regular season play, those being against Christian Academy, Rock Creek, and Lanesville twice. Cruz, I'm actually just now noticing this West Washington team has played in 6 games that went to overtime. 2 of those went to double overtime, those being against Eastern and North Harrison. I mean, they've, like you said, they've probably played more basketball quarter-wise than anybody in this sectional just because of those overtime games.
Yeah, and you learn a lot about your team whenever you get into situations like those. You know who you can go to, who you can trust on the court in these crunch time situations, and you know who you can't trust in those situations. So, going forward for West Washington, Jamie Cummings is going to have a really good idea of who his team is and what's going to work for them.
Cruz, this is a West Washington team led by 2 guys, well, actually 3 guys, like you said. They've got Kenton Chase and then 2 really tall athletic kids in Ian Rosenbaum and Titan Williams, 6'5" and 6'6" respectively. They honestly move like guards whenever they're out there, and especially Ian Rosenbaum. He really can score at will at times, and he uses his size to his advantage. I think if he can really do that in sectional play, they could really be a dangerous team to watch.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of height to go around in sectional 61, in which you typically get when it comes to single A basketball. So if West Washington's able to exploit their height advantage against whoever they end up playing throughout the sectional field, they really have a good chance at being able to shock some people. Honestly, I mean, you can't teach height. You can't teach height.
I wish.
You wish you could, but you can't. You're either
right
tall
there.
or you're not. So, I mean, you throw the ball up towards the corner of the backboard, go get it, lay it in. I mean, it's pretty simple. West Washington's bigs, Titan Williams, you mentioned Jackson Cameron, Ian Rosenbaum are good enough to be able to score the basketball underneath. Now, can they stop the high-scoring offenses of Christian Academy, Borden, and South Central? Who knows? Well, only time will tell. But so far this year, that has not been the case. But you said, 6 overtime games? That team is full of fighters. You don't go to 6 overtime games if you don't have a team of fighters. And 2 double overtime games?
Yep.
That's impressive. I don't know if I've ever seen that on a team schedule before.
I gotta say, West Washington has really always been a tall team. I don't know what is in the waters out there, but I swear every year they've got a kid that's at least 6'4", and he's always dangerous.
I remember playing agast Jake Strange my first 3 years of my career, man. And very big guy. And I'm blanking on the name of the guard that he played along with. His dad was the football coach before he passed away. Yeah. It's escaping my mind, but he, very crafty guard, but he had some height and some speed as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of height to go around at West Washington. They've had really good athletes walk the halls of that school too, and still some really good athletes there, and they have a chance to showcase what they've got during the sectional.
Cruz, let's move on to our last team before we really get diving into these matchups. We're going to talk about the Lanesville Eagles. Cruz, this has been an historically good program, at least in the 2010s is really where I come to mind. But the recent years, they've really been struggling. They're 4-17 last year after only winning one game last season. A total of 11 games won in 3 years since their Final Four appearance in 2021. It really sucks to see a great and an historically good team just really been struggling as of recent. I mean, Cruz, me and you have been on those really bad teams before. They definitely have the ability to turn things around. It takes a lot to be able to do that.
It does, and it's really unfortunate the way that everything has transpired at Lanesville, especially with such a historically great program over the course of the last 20 years or so. But you have a clean slate going forward. Mm-hmm. You have an entire campus that hasn't really had anything been painted on. And they have Kyle Brown down there now coaching, who was a coach at New Wash just a couple of years ago. And they have some players who can play the game of basketball at a really high level. So the biggest thing for Lanesville, I think, going forward, and I hate to count them out in the sectional, but I think realistically speaking, there's not much that they can do that would convince me that they have a legitimate shot to advance, let alone win the whole thing. Just establishing a winning culture there, doing the right things day in and day out, establishing a culture of discipline and respect towards the game and to each other also. Sky's the limit for what Lanesville can do over the course of the next couple of years. Unfortunately, though, this year is not going to be something that I think many people at Lanesville will be very fond of.
Well, they definitely have something to be fond of, at least on the girls' side of things.
Two-time state champions.
Two-time back-to-back state champions. Just gotta tip your hats to Angie Hitton, their whole staff, all the players. Absolutely incredible, and prayers out to Hadley Crozier. Hopefully she is okay after that.
Somebody who's went through a severe knee injury like that, obviously you hate to see that happen to anybody, but when you've gone through that and understand just how tough it is not only to go through the injury and how much pain you go through physically, but also the emotional damage that it causes going forward. You never know if you're going to be the same ever again, or whether you're going to be able to play the game of basketball the same way ever again. So, Hadley Crozier, best of luck with the rehab. Stay tough, keep your loved ones close to you, and you'll be back at better than ever before you even know it. So good luck to you, and congratulations on a state championship, and hope you get better.
All right, well, let's talk about these matchups that are coming up, Cruz Martin. First, let's look at those Tuesday matchups. West Washington and Christian Academy are the first matchup at 6 o'clock at Borden High School. Again, we've already talked about it, how West Washington was able to get that win over Christian Academy, the 1-point win in overtime. So you've got to think West Washington's got to coming into this game feeling a little bit good about themselves, but they can't feel too good because it is, again, records do not mean anything at this point. It is 0-0 right now in your record. Anything can happen come March.
That's right. It's always a clean slate whenever you enter the postseason. And for West Washington, you have to do two things. One, you have to take what you learned in that win over Christian Academy and bring it with you, obviously. And then you have to forget that you even beat Christian Academy. And the reason why I say this is because you can't get caught up on what you did a couple of weeks ago. You have to go out and do it again. You can't stay on your high horse. You got to know that this is a completely different 32 minutes than the game that you played earlier this year. And I guess in their case, was it an overtime game that they played in? So I guess the 36, 37 minutes that they ended up playing. yeah, you got to take what you can from that game and bring it with you, and then forget about it. So, you obviously are feeling good about yourself with the fact that you beat them, but you have to do it again, and that's my biggest takeaway. Will they be ready to try to do it all over again? Because that's going to be a tough task.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be in a completely different environment at Borden High School. Obviously, it's not at West Washington where the game was earlier this season against Christian Academy. Again, the Warriors 19-4, the Senators 9-13. Cruz, just looking at the matchups between both of these teams, really, what are you looking at for both teams between Christian Academy's high-powered offense? Really, what can West Washington do to stop that? What can Christian Academy do to be able to come away with this victory and revenge their loss from earlier this season?
Well, for West Washington, you're obviously going to have to get the ball out of Josh Renfro's hands. Again, Josh Renfro, one of the best scorers, not just in 1A basketball in the area, but in the area as a whole, classes 1 through 4A. So you got to get the ball out of his hands. Now you have David Cook, who can play in the paint and under the basket, and he can also extend the floor as well. So he's the next guy that you have to focus on. You can let the role players for Christian Academy, I think, have theirs. If you make them make decisions, they're probably not going to be as comfortable as Josh Renfro or David Cook in those certain situations. So if you can make the role players for Christian Academy make those decisions, and this is coming from a role player. This is coming from a role player. When people put me in positions I was really uncomfortable in, I didn't fare too well. So from experience, if you can put people like me in those situations, then you're going to be successful.
It's definitely going to be a great matchup. Currently, John Harrell has Christian Academy predicted to win that game 58-45. Again, whoever wins that matchup, Cruz will stay at the top part of that bracket. Whoever wins that matchup will take on the Rock Creek Academy Lions. Again, they are the reigning sectional champions. Just looking at potential matchups that could happen there, it could be a rematch of the first round of last season's sectional between Christian Academy and Rock Creek, which will undoubtedly be an incredible game regardless the final score, or it could be West Washington and Rock Creek and whoever win or go home situation there.
Yeah, I see Christian Academy taking the game against West Washington. Realistically speaking, now again, West Washington could surprise them.
Exactly.
And again, it's March. Anything can happen. If Rock Creek takes on Christian Academy, Rock Creek is going to have to, again, stop David Cook, stop Josh Renfro. It's the same thing. You take on West Washington, then you're going to have to worry about trying to contain Kenton Chase, keep him from getting to the basket. He loves to drive. He doesn't like to settle for a lot of jump shots. So you're really going to have to pack the paint against him. And then you're going to have to take out guys like Ian Rosenbaum, Jackson Cameron, Titan Williams. Again, around the rim, can extend the floor just a little bit. Not so much Titan Williams, but the other two could shoot a little bit. So two completely different teams, really, when you look at it. West Washington is really well-rounded. Christian Academy, there's two guys that you look at and some role players around them who I'm not discrediting at all. They're really good basketball players. But it's more obvious who you have to stop for Christian Academy. For West Washington, it's a little bit more of an even surface.
Cruz, let's now go to the bottom part of this bracket. And that 7:30 game on Tuesday nights, the Lanesville Eagles taking on the South Central Rebels. Again, this is a game where South Central won very easily in the regular season. You got to think South Central is going to be able to walk away with this win. But again, nothing matters whenever it comes to sectional play.
It's March, baby.
0-0. It's March, baby. Everything can happen. It's madness.
Exactly. Yeah. If South Central's able to take care of business against Lanesville, then they're going to have a really tough task. And the Borden Braves, who again are going to be revenge minded. You talk about the 1-point loss at South Central. Again, Borden, I know, wishes that they could have that one back, especially with the way that the game transpired. So, and like we talked about, Borden will have played one game in the last 2 weeks almost leading up to that game, and South Central will have played 2 games, including a game just 2 days prior on Tuesday, I guess 3 days prior on Tuesday. So, South Central's not going to be as fresh as Borden is going to be able to be, but at the same time, South Central's a really good basketball team, and like you said, they're young, so much younger than us. They are much younger than us, okay? So we're old guys now, but Borden and South Central, if that matchup does come to fruition, that is going to be one heck of a game, and I would not miss that one personally if I was anybody in the area. If you happen to be nearby Borden High School,
get there.
Swing by. What is it, game 2 on Friday? If that is the case, if South Central takes down Lanesville, be there at 7:30 on Friday night at Borden High School. It'll be it'll be worth the money.
Hey, I gotta say, If these matchups end up coming to fruition, if it is Rock Creek Christian Academy, Borden South Central, oh my goodness. I mean, that is a rivalry matchup at the top, and it's a rivalry matchup up and down the line, but those are going to be some very good games. Sectional 61 is going to be the place to be this coming week at Borden High School. Talking about that South Central Lanesville game, John Harrell currently has South Central predicted to win that game 66-42. Cruz, once again, both teams that got the bye this season were the two teams that got into the sectional championship last year, those being Rock Creek and Borden. Again, you've been in this situation before where you've been able to get the bye and have those couple days of rest. Really, how big of an impact does that have for a team?
Well, it's massive because, you know, when you have to play 3 games instead of 2, you have to completely prepare for an entire other team before you are able to take on the team that you would take on in semifinal Friday. So, for example, I believe it was my freshman year, and I wasn't on the varsity roster at the time, but we had to play New Washington, I believe, in the first round of sectional. And, you know, great game, won on a game-winning shot by Sterling Michael to take down New Washington. You know, we had to prepare for them, and then we had to take on one of the best teams that I think I've ever played, at least early on in my career, with Christian Academy. Guys like TJ Proctor and Bailey Conrad. Bailey Conrad playing at the Citadel. I think he played at Western Kentucky, too. Big dude, 6'7".
I believe Brady Dunn was on that team.
Brady Dunn was a freshman on that team. I mean, they were stacked. Wow. Man. They were stacked. So yeah, but it takes away your focus and preparation for that semifinal round. You get the rest. You get to watch. In the team that you are potentially going to be playing live in person. You can see everything that they do. You can hear some of their play calls and whatnot, and that's something I stress to the teams who have the bye. Pay attention to those games, okay? Don't just sit there, talk to your teammates, and goof off. Look at what these teams are doing. You know, you're going to go over it in the scouting report. You know that, but just being there and being able to watch them in person and to see what they do live right in front of your own very eyes, you know, honestly, nothing's more valuable than that, especially whenever it comes to March.
Cruz, we're obviously not going to give any predictions on who's going to win the Sectional 61 bracket, but just looking at the bracket as a whole, who do you think has the highest chances of getting to the sectional championship game?
Christian Academy on their side of the bracket. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The two favorites, Borden and South Central, that's where I'm a little bit iffy. I don't really know what to expect there. Christian Academy, I think, has the best chance on their side of the bracket. It's a toss-up between Borden and South Central. I can't say definitively whether one or the other will make it. You'll just have to tune. You'll just have to tune in at 7:30 on Friday night if that is indeed the matchup that ends up being played out in the hardwood.
There's no question that Sectional 61 is going to be one of the most entertaining sectionals, as it always is. And that Saturday night matchup, no matter who it's going to be, is going to be one for the history books. Cruz, before we end out this sectional preview show, I just really want to talk about some of these players that we're looking at going into sectional play. And again, we talked about them earlier. And I'm not even just going to mention one player. There are 3 players in my mind that are some of the best in the area, and they're all averaging north of 20 points. Those being Christian Academy's Joshua Renfro, Borden's Kasem Nash, and South Central's Cole Thomas. I mean, you can't get much better sharpshooters, much better shot creators, and much better kids than some of these guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if you want to watch some really high-quality basketball, especially from individual players, Sectional 61 is the place to be. You mentioned 3 players averaging north of 20 points a game. And they have good teams to go around them, too. There's a reason why these teams are favorites. It's not just because of these individuals. They have well-constructed teams around those guys. But these guys, these 3 guys that you talked about, are captaining the ship, at least on the court for those respective teams. So, again, really creative at scoring, especially those 3 that you named, Thomas, Renfro, and Nash. They find ways to put the ball in the hole. It doesn't matter what kind of defense you throw against them. They're going to find a way to put points on the board. And, you know, that's what makes those kids so special, at least on the court, is the fact that they find ways to score whenever all the attention defensively is focused on them.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are absolutely incredible. Again, I talk about Joshua Renfro. I mean, this this kid, again, he's a great kid, and I've talked to him a numerous amount of times. Great kid and an incredible basketball player. I can't wait to see what he has in his bag on the hardwood this week. And then again, you look at a guy like Kasem Nash. I mean, this kid dropped 51 points earlier this season against the Eastern Musketeers. He's Borden's all-time leading scorer in his senior season and his swan song. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. Cruz, you got the privilege to play alongside Kasem, and you also got to be able to play against these other guys in, I believe you played against Cole Thomas your senior year because he was a freshman.
I played against both of them my senior year because they were both freshmen whenever I was on my way out. And yeah, I mean, me and Josh Renfro had a great battle with our team in the sectional championship back in 2022. And that's what exciting.
You two got to talk about that charge. That has to be talked about at some point.
Everyone always brings up the charge, and I don't doubt that it had an impact on the game. But you know, there were other big plays made throughout there. So
there's no question.
I don't like to take that attention because you know, I like to view it as a team sport, at least at the high school level. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. If Josh Renfro wants to talk about that, I don't know if he'd be too fond about it, but sure, let's have that conversation.
That's incredible.
But yeah, playing against Josh Renfro whenever I was a senior, he was a freshman. I mean, that kid could hoop then. He can really play ball now. He can score in ways that I haven't seen before. And, you know, I played with Kasem Nash. I've seen him score. He and Josh Renfro are two really special players. And we talk about Thomas. I played against him my freshman year, too. Only played him against him one time, and that was at South Central my senior year. And that was a game where we took off in the third quarter. They were giving us a tough time in that first half, and we had a really friendly conversation with our coaching staff at halftime.
Really?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, so friendly.
Dear, Doc Nash being friendly.
Yeah. No, it was brutal. So, but yeah, and then we came out in the second half, and we took off. But I've watched Cole Thomas play throughout the last couple of years, and yeah, he really impresses me too as a scorer. I think he's a tier below Kasem Nash and Josh Renfro, but that's not to discredit him at all because he's got a great running mate in Christian Kuiper next to him who also has to get his.
Well, that's going to do it for our Sectional 61 preview show presented by the Borden SportsNet. It is going to be one to watch, Cruz Martin at Borden High School this week. Again, stay tuned and also be on the lookout for Borden SportsNet's coverage of Sectional 61 starting on Tuesday at 6 o'clock between the Christian Academy Warriors and the West Washington Senators. Cruz, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Tell your friends. Tell your friends.
Tell
Borden
your friends.
SportsNet. If you can't be there, Borden SportsNet. We won't be there on Tuesday, but me and you will be on the call for Friday's semifinals and Saturday's championship, and really looking forward to some great basketball.
It's going to be great to watch, and that's going to do it for our Sectional 61 preview show. Thank you all for watching here tonight, and good luck to all the teams competing in the Sectional 61. We'll see you all later.